I'm just going to say a couple of words and we'll get right to it. Is that okay? All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to our pre-council today. I am delighted to have my colleagues here. Thank you, council members, for coming in early to our directors meeting for this very important pre-council that we have scheduled, and I think others will be joining us. But we will go ahead and get started. But I do appreciate all of you coming in for this pre-council on urban agriculture. So it is my extreme honor and delight to introduce to you, to our right, Mr. Tim Rinna, who most of you know. Tim is, yeah, he does deserve applause. Tim is the founder of the Lincoln Lancaster, one of the co-founders with Dr. Megan McGuffey, who I'll get to next, of the Lincoln Lancaster County Food Policy Council, if you're familiar with that. And just as important, or to some of us more importantly, because we get to eat the vegetables and the honey from the Holly Hamlet, but Tim is responsible for developing that creation in his neighborhood. 10 acres, Tim, correct?
Yeah, right. No,
10 blocks. 10 what? How big is that?
No, it's actually 80 yards of
Thank you.
in our block.
Thank
so
you.
It's the equivalent of 80 yards of the Memorial Stadium football field that we have converted to garden in a block that has no lawns.
Well, I grew
So
that
people
by
had
a
to
lot.
cover their lawns to do this.
Yes, that's right. So the products that we get are from the Holly Hamlet. And Councilman Shob is a Hamletier, as am I, as is the mayor. So it's just, once again, easier to say yes and than to say no to Tim Rinna. But we really do enjoy gardening. I know, it is also very fun. In the center is Dr. Megan McGuffey. As many of you know, Megan is also a co-founder of the Lincoln Lancaster County Food Policy Council. Thank you for all of that work. In addition, I don't think she ever rests either. Megan is the executive director of Community Crops, and she does extraordinary work in Lincoln for everything gardens, community gardens. So thank you, Megan, for being here. And last but certainly not least, our very own City of Lincoln, Mickey Esposito, policy advisor to the mayor. Thank you, Mickey, for your key role in this really important issue. And last but not least, I know Paul Barnes, thank you for joining us. City Planning Department, you were key in writing the piece, I know, in the comprehensive plan. And worked with Megan and probably Tim on that wording as well. So thank you for joining us. And with that, Tim, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I still have 10 minutes here. Is that right? Okay. I do want to take just a second to say that I am so gratified to be given this opportunity. Megan and I have been working with the Lincoln Lancaster County Food Policy Council since 2013 on this whole issue, and over the past 2 years, we have just seen an absolute sea change on the part of city government in terms of the interest in this issue, and without the leadership of the mayor, and without this particular city council, we wouldn't be here today. So I am so grateful to you folks for giving us the opportunity to talk about the issue that I think is just absolutely bottom line, is, you know, Lincoln was built on food. Water, obviously, but it was built on food. When they established the city back in 1867, 1868, they didn't have steel, they didn't have cement, okay? They didn't have transportation systems and so forth, but they had to have food because if they couldn't feed themselves and maintain their bodies and get that human energy necessary to build this city, we would not have this city. Food is the building block. It's the cornerstone on which everything else rests. So with that, we are here to talk today a little bit about building a resilient local food system, and I'm going to be talking about the importance of local food. Surprise, surprise. Okay, there are good reasons, lots of good reasons to support local food. Good taste, local is fresher. Good health, fresher means more nutritious. Good business, supporting local agriculture boosts our local economy. Good stewardship. Local is more resource conscious with a smaller footprint. That's not always true, but people tend not to foul their own nest. Okay, something that happens over in the county next to us and so forth, we're not so concerned about that, but we don't want crazy stuff happening in our yard. We don't want it happening in our city. And so if you can keep this stuff local, you don't end up with Superfund sites. That's partially what we're talking about. So these are the issues that we usually talk about when we talk about the importance of local food. But there's another one, food security, that we almost never talk about. And if you had asked me 13 years ago what food security was, I would have said something to the effect of, I'm not even sure I've heard that phrase. What is that? Well, this is the official definition of food security. And it comes from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, and it's written from the perspective of the consumer. Not from the producer, but from the perspective of the consumer, of the eater. Food security exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and their food preferences for an active and healthy life. It's hard to imagine language any wonkier than that, okay? But that does actually cover what this is about, is that you can get what you need when you need it. Okay, so here, 6 things anyone who likes to eat should know about our food supply. First, the average bite of food on our plate travels 1,346 miles to get there. The problem with that is that this is from a Pentagon study in January of 1969. Today, that number is over 2,000 miles. The average bite of food that we eat travels 2,000 miles to get to our plate, and 1 out of 5 actually comes from outside the country. Secondly, over 1/3 of the country's vegetables and 2/3 of the country's fruits and nuts are grown in California. Okay, over on the left here in the green area, that's the California Central Valley. This is the latest map from the U.S. Drought Monitor, based here in Lincoln, Nebraska. All right, and you can see that the California Central Valley is in the worst condition of exceptional drought. And if you've been following the news, you know that they are assailed with wildfires. And they have wildfires because they're not getting any moisture. They're not getting any rain. So they're deep into a mega drought. There's no end in sight on this. They're having record heat waves. It's just, this is our greengrocer. This is where America goes to get its fresh foods. It's not going to be able to go there any longer. And when you look at the entire West, here's the latest Drought Monitor map. We get a lot of our food from the desert in Arizona. Okay, they love those growing conditions down there. They just siphon that water off of the Colorado River and over into those fields. They can't do that any longer. For the first time, they're rationing water to 4 states out of the Colorado River. Third, 90% of the $4.4 billion Nebraskans annually spend on food leaves the state. $4 billion worth of our food dollar goes somewhere else. And you say, how is that possible? We're an agricultural powerhouse. We're one of the agricultural titans of the world. We're the breadbasket. And the answer is that we grow feed, not food. This is from the Nebraska Corn Board, fall 2015, in one of their Corns Talk inserts that they put in the Lincoln Journal-Star. The fact is that most of the corn in Nebraska does not end up in human food products. The vast majority of Nebraska's corn crop is fed to livestock in Nebraska and outside the state, or transformed into ethanol. Distiller's grains, a co-product of the ethanol process, is also a high-value livestock feed. Well, for a while, until we move to electric vehicles. Point 5, the largest irrigated crop in America is the lawn. According to NASA from 2005 research, there are 3 times more acres of lawns in the U.S. than irrigated corn. And Nebraska, of course, is the capital of irrigated corn. All right? That is enough lawn to cover the entire state of Ohio, which is the green area there. And finally, the 6th reason, just-in-time delivery. All right. This is the national distribution policy here in the United States. It's actually the international distribution policy for the Western world, all right, is your typical grocery store stocks just 3 days worth of inventory. It's also true of Ace Hardware, all right, is that everybody counts on the trucks rolling in every 72 hours, okay? In 3 days, we don't have it now, but in 3 days we'll have it. It's on the truck, it's coming in, we placed the order, just, send it and all this sort of stuff. That's what we do. Everything is based on 3 days worth of inventory, because what business wants to actually have just stock sitting there? I mean, it's costly overhead, right? So just get what you need. Don't have, 4 years supply. Just get, 3 to 7 days, okay? All right. That just-in-time delivery, 72-hour policy is what Lord Cameron of Dillington, who is a member of the British House of Lords and the chair of the United Kingdom's all-party parliamentary group on agriculture and food for development, he is a gentleman farmer from Somerset, England. Lord Cameron says That just-in-time delivery policy is the equivalent of being 9 meals from anarchy. And when I first came across that phrase, 9 meals from anarchy, I thought, I'm an English major. What does that even mean? All right? And so I had to, go back and parse all of this and so forth. But what inspired Lord Cameron to come to this conclusion is he was watching coverage of Hurricane Katrina in 2005 while he was in his perch in Parliament in London. And he realized that, oh my God, even an advanced industrial technological nation like the United States and the United Kingdom said, we're just 9 meals from anarchy. And what he meant by that is the first day, when you got a hurricane coming, and we do have advanced weather notice now with things like hurricanes. Not so much with derechos, not so much with tornadoes, but with hurricanes we do. We can track the storm, we can name it, we can see it's coming in. We can do all that stuff. What Lord Cameron says is the first day, meals 1 through 3, everybody races to the store and loads up. Okay? The second day, everybody goes back to the store. This is meals 4 through 6, and they clear the shelves. You may buy enough toilet cleaner for 4 years, okay, but you take whatever you can get off the shelves. And the third day, Lord Cameron says, when the trucks haven't gotten in and we can't get out, he says, this is meals 7 through 9. He says, after just 3 days without food, there will be rats, mayhem, and maybe even murder. You will have the fabric of civilization disintegrating that quickly. And if you wonder, is there a cultural or literary correspondent to this? Les Miserables, Les Mis. What sets the action of that entire operetta into motion? Jean Valjean does not want to watch his orphan nephews and his orphan nieces starve to death, so he steals a loaf of bread. No parent is going to watch their child go hungry if there's anything they can do to stop it. So, what is the takeaway? We got a little difficulty here. The farther away we are from our food supply, the more insecure we are. So, the best means for improving Lincoln's and Lancaster County's food security is to build a resilient local food system, which is called for in the 2021-2027 Climate Action Plan, and now is part of the 2040 Comprehensive Plan for the city of Lincoln. So, that's the best way to build food security, but we have to work fast and we have to think big. On the urgency level, this here is the headline, the banner headline, on the Lincoln Journal-Star front page on August 10th, 2021. A code red for humanity. United Nations issues scathing climate report. Quote, it's just guaranteed that it's going to get worse, end quote, said report co-author Linda Mearns, a senior climate scientist at the U.S. National Center for Atmospheric Research. Quote, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, end quote. So, here's what the United Nations is saying. To have a chance of limiting global temperature rise to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is the equivalent of 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, since the dawn of the industrial age in 2050, we must cut global greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030. We have 8.5 years to cut half. And if anybody thinks that making those sorts of necessary cuts isn't going to have an impact on our food supply, I don't think we're paying close enough attention. All right, and to do all this stuff, it means that we're going to have to scale up quickly with respect to our own food production, not just our food consumption, but our food production. To supply Lancaster County's current population of 300,000 people with fruits and vegetables will require 17,000 acres under cultivation. All right, we just opened up the Lincoln Airport Authority land, and that's 12 acres. Okay, and we're looking at doing a pilot project for an acre, okay? This is a good start. I'm not making fun of it. I'm proud to be part of this entire process and so forth, but we need 17,000, and that assumes that our population stays stable. But our 2050 plan is talking about the city of Lincoln and Lancaster County growing to 400,000 people, which means you're going to have to boost those numbers. So that's one of the things we have to do to facilitate the transition that needs to happen here in our agricultural production, where we're growing corn and soybeans, which we can't eat, all right, to actually growing food that we can put on our mouths. I think we need to set some initial goals, such as that we will source 20% of our food from local growers by 2030, 20%, 1 out of 5 bites will now actually come from Lancaster County. And then we need to quickly ramp that up and triple that number to 60% by 2040. Once we figure out how to do it, there's no reason we can't move quickly. But that's what needs to happen, folks. This is not an issue that we dare kick the can down the road on. Lincoln is built on food. It was built on food back in 1868. It's built on food today. So just as Lincoln City government is planning to ensure we will always have a reliable water supply, we need to also make plans to ensure that we will have a reliable and resilient local food supply. So thank you very much. You're very patient.
Thank you, Tim. Well, I think we'll save questions to the end, if that's all right. Thank you for that, and we'll move on to Dr. McGuffey.
Okay.
Thank you, Megan.
Well, thank you. And I always appreciate that Tim is willing to say the hard parts of things. And I think, it's really important to have the facts and to understand the urgency of these issues. But I always get to do the fun job, which is to talk about all the possibility and the progress we already have in Lincoln that we can build upon. So one thing I always like to think about is, it sounds really intimidating when you see those numbers and the scale, but Lincoln did grow food. Before World War II, everyone was localized in their food supply. So this is really something that's very rapidly turned over, and we have that history, so we can get back there. So it's like, it is new and exciting, but it's also coming from knowledge that we all have in our own families and our own histories. So I just would challenge Lincoln to think about urban ag as a community initiative. So you've probably heard me say this before, but we can really start to think about the food system as a critical piece of infrastructure. So the way we plan for our transportation system, our water and sewer system, we can make those same investments. We can plan, we can assess, we can metric, and then invest in this as a critical piece of infrastructure. And there are lots of folks here that want to help and are already starting the work. So first, the Lincoln-Lancaster County Food Policy Council that Councilwoman Tammy Ward mentioned earlier. We've been around in some form or another since 2013, and we are a grassroots coalition of citizens across many sectors and areas of interest who are working to develop policies around the food system. And we have already done the work of a community food assessment, which is really kind of a snapshot look at the data of where is our food system currently, so that we can build and create goals from there. And we've had a great history of working with city government and other local agencies to just understand what are the issues, what can we already do with the policy we have, what do we need to change or add in policy. So there's a really good basis of relationship, and there's a few areas here listed that we've already started doing this work in. And then my organization, Community Crops, we provide education, advocacy, and experiences to grow local food. So we started in 2005, and today we operate 12 community gardens, 2 farms, an urban ag plot, and a production greenhouse. So we're sitting around 18 acres today. And really, we serve primarily low to moderate income folks in town, and a good portion of our participants are from the immigrant and refugee communities. So there's deep knowledge, deep diversity in our food system here in Lincoln. We just have to build on that, and so that's something we're really excited about, whether it's people growing food for themselves and their families so they're more food secure personally, or if it's at a community scale where they're farming as a business. And we've had some successes, so that's what we can build on. So some great things city government has already done: code changes, long-range plan modifications. I'm sure Mickey will hint to some of this more, but government has already seen these are things the community cares about, and they've made some proactive changes. And the climate action plan that this council supported is also a huge piece of that. Elevating building resilient local food systems, a top priority, is a huge step. And there's also now an internal team of expertise, and that's so critical in food system work because it touches every department. It touches so many different areas of knowledge to do a good urban agriculture project. So it's really critical that we all be coordinating and working together. And then finally, this was hinted at as well, but the Air Park Farm is a really big success that's come out of a lot of years of work. Thank you. Yes, because of Councilwoman Tammy Ward and Nick Cusick and the members of the Airport Authority Board. So we have always had this idea that local governments own so much land in the community. And if we could convert some of that land from growing feed to growing food, we would maybe be on the right track without even having to interfere with other land uses. And so this is a 12-acre property that was in conventional corn and soy for many years, and now it's growing food for the first time. So very exciting step. And I think the other thing I just kind of want to leave off with, and then let Mickey make some remarks, and hopefully we have time for discussion, is really food systems are so place-based. It has to be based on the local culture and the local community and its strengths. And so that's why I took some time to highlight the things we're already doing. We want to create a food system that's resilient and adaptable to the future challenges, but we also want to think about it as a piece of our local culture. It's what makes Lincoln a great place to live. And so we can kind of become known as a local food city and a leader in the Midwest and nationally, and that's a really exciting opportunity. Thank you very much. Hand it over to Mickey.
Thank you all for having us. This is just wanted to give a sense of the progress we're already making. We're not even a year into our climate action plan implementation, and in the realm of food and the foodie team, we've really had some great success. So let's see. All right, so as you know, part of the climate action plan, there's an action item dedicated to building a resilient local food system. And so the question for all of us is really, what is the role of city government? We have traditionally worn a regulatory hat with respect to food, where our health department regulates, how restaurants operate and whether or not we're eating fresh food and food that's not going to make us sick. So now we're looking at it from the standpoint of partnership. How do we build a resilient local food system, and what is the role of government relative to partnership? So as a start, we have to set really strong policies. And in the realm of food security or insecurity, it's very important to approach food with an equity lens. This is all part of climate and environmental justice. And so as we approach policies relative to food, whether it's policies or programs, we really need to keep in mind that there are a lot of people who just don't have access to local fresh food. And that's something the city can convene on, can lead on, can establish and set the right tone for as we go forward. So keeping fairness and equity in our minds as we develop programming. For some reason. Second, we have to walk the talk. If we're going to talk about building a local food system, it's a resilient local food system, it's really important that we look at ourselves as a city and examine our farm contracts and see how we're doing things with respect to those management contracts. Just this year, the council approved new specifications for farm management. And it was a big deal, even though it was a small paperwork exercise that didn't cost us any more money. It was a way to require sustainable and regenerative ag practices on city property. We have about 1,700 acres of city land that we can make sure there's no till on. We can incorporate cover crops. We can reduce synthetic chemical application, toxic pesticides, and even the kind of seed we're growing. In doing so, we can lower production costs and actually increase crop yield. And it also has the additional benefit of improving soil health and sequestering carbon. So we as a city need to make sure we are walking the talk, and thank you, City Council, for approving that recent change. The other thing is we can continue funding community gardens. We already provide $25,000 worth of CDBG grants to community crops annually. We also have a strong partnership with Lincoln Public Schools and the Parks Department through supporting community gardens. One of the other things we're funding currently is a food diversion pilot with Lincoln Public Schools and the Solid Waste Operations Division of LTU. Not just dealing with food waste diversion to create compostable areas, but also can we deliver fresh food leftovers from LPS to people who need it. Those are the kinds of ways city government can help facilitate managing food, local food, but also not wasting food. And then finally, or no, actually there's 2 more slides here. We have recently decided to dedicate brownfield funds for site assessments and cleanup on vacant, underutilized, and undevelopable lots. This particular lot that we're talking about is just east of the People City Mission that we're devoting to a community garden or commercial agriculture. So let me talk a little bit about this commercial urban ag pilot that we're doing. This is on vacant JPA land. Again, it's east of the People City Mission, which gives us an opportunity to serve the very people who need it as we're growing food. Currently, the People City Mission have been talking about even devoting an additional 4 to 5 acres of their own land to expand this area. It's in the floodplain. We do have some C&D, construction and demolition waste there that needs to be removed. But for the most part, the land is viable for urban commercial agriculture. It is, however, in a floodplain, so we have to be mindful of what we grow and how we use it, and whether it will flood. The hope is to partner with an outfit like Community Crops and to stand up an entrepreneur program for aspiring farmers that are really outgrowing the Prairie Pines program. And in this way, the city can donate land that just isn't being used today with a partner like Community Crops. And the hope is just to establish shared equipment, materials, and supplies to those early aspiring farmers. That's first year of the Climate Action Plan. I'm sure there's more that we can continue to do, but just as a start in being intentional about food and agricultural production, we've really been able to establish a strong and healthy partnership. All right. That's all the slides I have.
Thank you very much, Mickey. And I think before we have a couple minutes left before we go to questions and answers, I want to recognize and thank Director David Carey for coming in. We really appreciate you being here. Is there anything you would like to say? We did recognize Paul Barnes just a bit ago, but we so appreciate your being here. We know you have a huge week last week and ahead of you, so
Yeah,
would you like a, thank you.
I'll just take a couple seconds, actually. I just
Be great.
appreciate all the work that's being done, and as was noted, the 2050 plan is incorporating not just the climate action plan material, but specifically the urban agriculture topic. And I would remind you that policy 22 plan is it in detail goes through a lot of what was just discussed. So it's very much expanded in the new plan, and it's something that we have a focus on moving forward. So I won't take any more time, but just thank you for being able to put a spotlight on that.
Thank you, Director Carey. And thank you for you and your staff working with, I know, Community Crops and with Food Policy Council on that language. I know that that was really important to the department and to us, so for Team Urban Ag, so thank you. Are there questions for the presenters from council at all? No,
I have a
okay.
question.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Chair. And you can have a meeting back.
No, this is your show. So 17,000 acres, that's hard for me to imagine and visualize. How big is 17,000 acres? How much of the city is that?
That number is imposing, and I can't tell you an equivalency right now, but I can tell you that Lancaster County itself has over 550,000 acres in it. All right, so if you went from the north boundary to the south boundary, from the east boundary to the west boundary, there's over 550,000 acres in Lancaster County itself. So the land is there. The thing about getting land that is city-owned, that is close to the city limits, is critical. Because if we're going to have young farmers, these are the ones with the good knees and the strong backs and, the endless enthusiasm. If we're going to have them, they don't have money to buy their own farm. All right? Land around the city is very pricey. They're not going to be able to afford to get it. To be able to put that young workforce that's healthy and strong to work growing our food, they can't be commuting down to Firth. They can't be commuting out to Davie. They can't be going over to Waverly. all right? We want them being able to live close to where they're going to be working, so they don't spend 30 to 45 minutes in a commute going back and forth. So the land is here in Lancaster County. It's here. And if we get the city and the county to lead on this, then you're going to be able to get the private sector to sit up and take notice and say, wait a second, there's money to be made here. I don't have to grow $3 corn, okay? I got people that might be willing to do this sort of stuff. I'm taking too much time.
Whoops, thank you for that answer, Tim. And Councilman Show just slipped us a note that said 26 square miles is the equivalent. So that helps frame that. So that's a lot, but nothing that we can't do. I know our time is up. Was there any other quick questions from council?
This is really good. Thank you so much for presenting. I'm so glad, thank you for the calculations, because I went to sections. I went, oh, that's like 300 sections. Oh, who knows sections?
Yeah, I also tend to grow things, so thank you for that. I want to thank you again for presenting, and thank you, Mickey, thank you, Director Carey as well. Thank you, Tim and Megan.
And Councilwoman, if I may, I just want to say that I have read the comprehensive plan draft on food, and it's incredible. It's just
incredible.
wonderful.
Yeah, rounds of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That will end our pre-council.
Perfect. We'll get started with directors in about 2 minutes at 2:04 or 2:05.